Let's start with the truth that most of the spiritual community is too afraid to tell you. You cannot bypass the flesh to reach the divine. Think about the last time you had a massive energetic breakthrough. Maybe it was a deep meditation, a powerful Reiki session, or a shamanic journey. You felt expanded, cosmic, and limitless. And then, 24 hours later, you hit a wall. Unexplained fatigue, brain fog, irritability. A sudden wave of anxiety that seemingly came out of nowhere, or a physical body that felt completely drained, heavy, and disconnected. We've been taught to look at those symptoms and call it an ascension flu or a spiritual upgrade. But it's not an upgrade, it's a blowout. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Season 2, and we are stepping into a territory that separates the casual seekers from the true masters. We are talking about somatic resonance and the body vessel. In the first season of this podcast, we opened the gates. We talked about the initiation, the awakening, and the merging of Reiki and shamanic paths. We looked up and we looked out into the ether. But if you want to hold that power sustainably, if you want your spiritual authority to actually change the fabric of your physical reality, your business, and your health, you have to look down. Here's the energetic physics of the situation. You can call down the highest frequency of cosmic light. You can command the deepest shamanic currents. But if you try to run a 220-volt current through a 110-volt household socket, you don't light up the room, you fry the circuits. Your nervous system is the wiring. Your physical body is the vessel. And if the vessel is unregulated, tight, or trapped in old survival loops, it cannot hold the light you are asking it to carry. For decades, the mainstream spiritual narrative has told us that the body is a cage. They told us that enlightenment means escaping the flesh, transcending the physical world, and floating away into the light. I'm here to tell you that old paradigm is dead. The ultimate goal of the mystic is not to leave the body, it is to fully, unconditionally inhabit it. Your body is not an obstacle in the way of your spiritual work. Your body is the work. It is the ultimate, most advanced piece of spiritual technology on this planet. Every cell, every strand of fascia, every nerve ending is designed to be a pristine conductor for source energy. When you treat your body like an afterthought, your energy work becomes an illusion. It stays up in your head as a nice concept, a beautiful visualization, but when you treat your body like the altar, that is when the magic becomes unshakable. That is when your presence alone can shift a room, because the frequency isn't just floating in your aura, it is anchored in your bones. Over the next 8 episodes of this season, we are going to stop bypassing the flesh. We're going to dive deep into the world of somatic Reiki, nervous system regulation, vocal vibration, and the physical architecture of trauma release. I'm going to show you how to upgrade your physical wiring so you can hold massive spiritual current without burning out, blowing out, or losing your ground. Today we start at the foundation. We are reclaiming the altar. So, take a breath. Drop your shoulders away from your ears. Unclench your jaw. Stop trying to look up into the sky for answers, and let's go deep into the vessel. So let's look under the hood. What is actually happening to your biology when you experience a spiritual blowout? To understand this, we have to look at a part of your physical anatomy that mainstream science is only just beginning to appreciate, but that ancient traditions have always understood. We need to talk about your fascia. Fascia is the continuous web-like sheet of connective tissue that wraps around every single muscle, every organ, every bone, and every nerve ending in your entire body. For a long time, Western medicine treated fascia like simple packing material, just something to hold your body in place. But modern biophysics has revealed something incredible. Fascia is a highly conductive, fluid-filled, crystalline semiconductor. Now, what does that mean in plain English? It means your fascia is the literal fiber optic wiring system of your spiritual anatomy. It is the grid through which subtle energy, Reiki, and shamanic currents travel through the physical flesh. When your fascia is hydrated, open, and relaxed, energy moves through you like electricity through a pristine copper wire. It's effortless, it's clean. But here's the problem. Trauma, chronic stress, and societal conditioning don't just live in your mind. They calcify in your tissue. When you experience an emotional shock, a boundary violation, or years of chronic anxiety, your primitive survival brain commands your body to brace. Your muscles tighten, your breath shallows, and your fascia literally contracts, hardens, and dries up. It forms dense, rigid armor inside your body to protect you from the world. Your blocks aren't abstract spiritual tests, they are physical traffic jams in your tissues. Now fast forward to your spiritual practice. You step into a sacred container, you strike a shamanic drum, or you open up a channel to high-frequency cosmic Reiki light. This massive wave of high-voltage current enters your field. It travels down into your crown, moves through your head, and begins descending through your body vessel. But as it travels down, it hits those dense, calcified, locked-up areas of armored fascia in your throat, your chest, or your solar plexus. The energy cannot pass. It hits a physical brick wall. And because energy cannot be destroyed, it has to go somewhere. It ricochets, it bounces right back up into your upper chakras and floods your head. That is the exact moment the blowout happens. Suddenly your head is spinning, you feel spaced out, dizzy, and disconnected from reality. You get a sudden tension headache, or your nervous system goes into an absolute panic loop because you have too much ungrounded, static electricity trapped in your upper body with nowhere to go. You aren't too spiritual for this world because you feel dizzy after a session. The truth is, your wiring is just congested. And until we learn how to clear the physical traffic jams in the tissue, that high-frequency light will always feel like a threat to your primitive nervous system. So how do we fix the wiring? How do we evolve our practice to handle the voltage? That is where we introduce a completely different approach, Somatic Reiki. So how do we fix the wiring, the ricochet and the burnout, and clear those traffic jams in the tissues? We have to evolve the way we work with energy, and that evolution is what I call Somatic Reiki. If you've taken a traditional Reiki class, you know how it usually goes. You're taught to work primarily in the invisible spaces. You hover your hands a few inches above the body, you scan the auric field, you visualize beautiful colors, and you clear the chakras from the inside out. Now, don't get me wrong, that work is beautiful and it absolutely has its place. But if it's the only way you operate, you are leaving the physical vessel completely unchanged. You are putting a gorgeous layer of golden light on top of a body that is still actively trapped in a fight or flight response. You're trying to wallpaper a house while the foundation is still cracking. Somatic Reiki changes the entire game because it shifts the energy from a passive observation to an active, deep tissue melting agent. We aren't trying to pull the trauma out of the body. We are bringing so much presence into the space that the trauma no longer has room to hide. When you practice somatic Reiki, you aren't just hovering your hands and wishing for the best. You are pairing intelligent, intentional, physical touch with precise energetic pathways and breathwork to meet the density exactly where it lives, right inside the flesh, right inside the armored fascia we just talked about. Think of it like this. Imagine a block of ice trapped inside your chest. If you just wave your hands over it and visualize it melting, it's going to take a long time. But if you place an intentional, steady, highly concentrated heat source directly underneath that ice, and you don't look away, the physics of nature take over. The ice has no choice but to melt back into fluid flow. That is what we are doing with somatic Reiki. We are using the high-frequency current of Reiki not to float away into the astral plane, but as a laser-focused spotlight to illuminate, warm, and soften the frozen, calcified survival stress held in the body's tissues. But here's the catch, and this is the secret that trips up almost every practitioner. You cannot melt a client's frozen density if your own vessel is rigid. To facilitate this kind of deep cellular release for someone else, your own nervous system has to be an absolute anchor of safety. If a client's body senses even a shred of performance anxiety, judgment, or tension in your hands, their primitive survival brain will instantly clamp down. They will armor up even harder to protect themselves. Somatic Reiki requires you to step out of the role of a passive channel and step into the role of a highly regulated conductor. It demands that you stand at the table or sit in your own self-treatment practice with an unshakable, embodied ground. When your wiring is clean and your physical vessel is completely settled, your presence becomes a safe harbor. In the moment a client's nervous system feels that genuine, biological safety, the armor naturally drops. The fascia relaxes, the copper wires open up, and that high-voltage spiritual current can finally flow all the way down to the soles of their feet, anchoring real, permanent transformation in their physical lives. So how do we actually construct this unshakable ground inside ourselves on a daily basis? It comes down to 3 fundamental keys. Let's break them down and look at the embodied vessel. To consistently run high voltage energy without a blowout, you need a reliable blueprint. You need a daily structural practice that prepares the flesh for the current. Through years of refining this work, I've broken this down into what I call the 3 pillars of the embodied vessel. These are kind of the non-negotiable laws of somatic energy conduction. Pillar number 1 is absolute ground. This is where everything begins, and yet it's the pillar most spiritual seekers skip. We've been taught that grounding is just a nice visualization, imagining tree roots growing out of your feet while your mind is still spinning at 1,000,000 miles an hour. That is mental grounding, and it doesn't work when high voltage current hits your system. Absolute ground is a physical shift in your actual biology. If it is the practice of dropping your awareness out of your overactive mind and letting it sink completely into the dense, heavy reality of your skeletal system. It is noticing the physical weight of your bones, feeling the literal gravity pressing your pelvis into your chair, your feet on the floor, your heels into the earth. When you anchor your attention in the heaviest, most dense parts of your biology, you create an electrical ground. You provide a safe terminal for any excess static energy to exit the body instead of bouncing back up into your head. If you want to touch the sky, you have to build a foundation deep enough into the bedrock of the earth to support that height. Pillar number 2, somatic safety. Here is a fundamental rule of human biology. Your body will not conduct energy if it feels threatened. Your primitive survival brain doesn't care about your spiritual growth. Its only job is to keep you alive. And if it detects danger, it will instantly clamp the tissue shut, dry up the fascia, and armor the body. But here's the trap. Your primitive brain doesn't know the difference between a real, physical predator and your own internal performance anxiety, your self-doubt, or the muscular bracing you do when you're trying too hard to channel perfectly. Somatic safety is the deliberate act of convincing your primitive nervous system that it is completely safe right now, in this exact moment. You do this through biological feedback loops. You deliberately soften your gaze. You consciously drop your shoulders away from your ears. You loosen your jaw, because a clenched jaw is the body's universal signal that is preparing for a fight. When you consciously unbrace the body, you send a biological message straight to your brain that says, I am safe. The room is safe. We can open the gates. So pillar number 3, clean conduction. Once you have the ground and once you have the safety, the current will begin to move. This is where pillar 3 comes in, clean conduction. Clean conduction means allowing the energy and the physical sensations to move through your tissue without friction, without judgment, and without trying to fix them. As the light begins to melt the frozen density inside you, you are going to feel things. You might feel a sudden spike of heat, a sharp twinge in your chest, a wave of shaking, or an unexpected surge of grief or anger. Now, the amateur practitioner immediately panics. They try to analyze it, they try to label it, or they try to perform an aggressive clearing ritual to force it out. But the moment you try to manipulate or judge a sensation, you create mental friction, and friction is what causes the blowout. A master practitioner practices clean conduction. They become a neutral, spacious witness. They don't label the sensation as bad energy or darkness. They just feel it as a raw information, raw electricity moving through the wires, and they let it pass all the way through until it resolves itself. The transition to practice. These 3 pillars, absolute ground, somatic safety, and clean conduction, are the exact architecture required to hold the frequency of a true lineage head. But I don't want you to just take my word for this. I don't want this to become another intellectual concept that you store away in your mind. We're going to practice this right now. We're going to upgrade your wiring in real time. Wherever you are, if it is safe to do so, let's set up and step up to the altar. If your eyes are open, let your gaze soften, and if you can close them completely. Take a deep, heavy breath in through your nose. Pull it all the way down into your stomach. Hold it at the top for 3, 2, 1, and drop it out of your mouth with a heavy, unvarnished sigh. Let the sound vibrate your chest. Now, bring your awareness to your feet. I don't want you to just think about them or visualize tree roots. I want you to feel the literal physical weight of your bones pressing into the floor, your shoes, or the earth beneath you. Notice the exact point of contact. Feel the heavy gravity holding you there. As you take your next breath, imagine sending a thick, heavy, obsidian dark current from the base of your skull down your spine, splitting past your hips and flushing straight out of the soles of your feet. Let it drag every ounce of mental static, every overactive loop, and every piece of ungrounded cosmic current straight down into the floor. Breathe it all the way out. Stay there for a second in the stillness. Feel the density of your frame. You are not a floating head trying to escape this world. You are a living altar, fully inhabited. Welcome home to the vessel. So practice this grounding flush every single time you finish an energy session, every time you step off of a client call, and every morning before you open your laptop. Build the altar first. In the next episode, we are going to dive deep into the actual electrical wiring of this vessel, the nervous system grid. I'm going to show you exactly how the fight or flight response dictates your ability to read subtle energy, and how to tune your antenna to completely static-free frequency. Until next time, stay in your bones. Peace.